Members of the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, particularly the Minister of National Security, Member of Parliament for Point Fortin and Minister of National Security, Major General Dillon, retired, member of the St. Joseph Community, your representative, Minister of Health, Minister Terence Dayal Singh, Minister responsible for UDICOT, the executing agency for building this facility, Mr. Randall Mitchell, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, Senator Dennis Moses, Minister of Public Administration, Minister Maxie Coffey, Minister of Local Government and Minister of Rural Development, Senator Kazim Hussain, permanent secretaries, but most importantly this morning, I would like to recognize the man who is responsible for securing us, Acting Commissioner Stephen Williams, and his officers who are present here today. I see Officer Seals representing the 2nd Division of the Police Service, Mr. Noel Garcia, who is the chairman of the UDICOT, former Councillor Master Chanpak, who gave us the opening prayer, and my own PS, head of the public service, Mr. Sandra Jones, other members of the community, members of the media, and most importantly, the children of St. Joseph TML who greeted us here this morning. Ladies and gentlemen all, thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this very significant exercise of providing the police service with one of the finest facilities for housing police officers that I'm aware of anywhere in the Caribbean. This facility this morning represents not just a building in which the police will function, but it symbolizes a commitment from the people of Trinidad and Tobago to make available to those citizens whose job it is to secure us the most comfortable and most effective arrangements for discharging that responsibility. We've all grown up knowing the police. And in all societies, there's a requirement for the police. Even in heaven, where there was no police, there was misbehavior, and a certain gentleman had to be thrown out. We were told he ended up on earth, probably in Trinidad. But the bottom line is that we in Trinidad and Tobago at this time, and for quite some time, have been experiencing a requirement for greater and more effective policing, because the level of unacceptable conduct on the part of our citizens had grown to the extent where it is now threatening everything else that we own and that we aspire to. And as we do that, we start by holding the police responsible for improving the circumstances. But how far can we go in doing that? And how different has it become for those of us who grew up knowing that the police was our friend and our protector? I remember when I was a child, my grandfather lent one of his colleagues some money, and the gentleman could not repay. I don't think he was dishonest, but I think poverty in those days was such that people just couldn't deal with money. They didn't have money. So he ended up lending this friend some money, and the guy couldn't repay it. And my grandmother, being what she was, who she was, she encouraged my grandfather to take him to court. And he was taken to court, and he didn't turn up in court. And a warrant was issued for his arrest. And the poor gentleman knew that the police was after him for such a huge crime of not repaying $300. So what he used to do, he used to hide away from home. He used to stay away from home until very late in the evening, and he would come back into the house, and then he would leave very early, just before dawn, and get back into the bush where he was working in his garden and evade the police in this way. But in those days, the police will get you. So the police, Mariah police, went under his house, waited until he was about to leave at 3:30 in the morning, and apprehended him in Mariah, and was walking him to Scarborough Police Station, where he would be incarcerated for this serious offense of not repaying a loan. But Mariah police would get him, and they would walk him to the station. That is 6 miles of walking to execute this duty of a warrant. And as a child, I distinctly recall what the police represented then. Very shine boots and very shine buttons and the authority of the state apprehending an individual. And to me, that was one of the biggest things that was happening in my life. There was a pair of policemen walking behind a citizen, escorting him to prison. And there was respect for the police, and there was the police doing the job to completion. And there was a citizenry accepting that it is the police that has the duty to carry out this kind of unpleasant duty, but duty nonetheless. How far have we come from those days? Where today, being a police officer is putting your life on the line every hour, even when you're off duty. And that there are citizens who are prepared to have themselves photographed with a legal high-powered weapon and post that on Facebook to tell the country how armed they are, and worse, how ready they are to take on the state. I know that there's a whole lot that the police can be criticized for, but we have to accept that it's a very dangerous job, and those of us who rely on the police to secure us need to support the police. And by the same token, the police itself have a duty to ensure that those who call themselves police and those who wear the uniform and who are stamped with the imprimatur of state to use arms and ammunition against the citizenry, that you are of the highest caliber and of the most serious among our citizens. It's an awesome responsibility to be able to apprehend the citizen, deprive him or her of her liberties, and worse, to conclude that you are in danger and to execute or expire life. Those are the balances we have to face. It's now pretty normal in Trinidad and Tobago to wake up every morning and be greeted with the first item of news that somebody has killed somebody. And on many occasions, somebody has been killed by the police. There's a new statistic now I saw it this morning, and the statistic is how many persons have been killed by the police. I think the figure is now 20 for the year. But I would like that to be paralleled by how many times the police have been shot at or been hurt. And when we look at those two statistics, we'll get a clear picture as to what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to understand that without security, without safety of the person and property, everything else we aspire to is in jeopardy. And there is no other arrangement which we are practicing or which is known to us than to have the police and the security agencies respond in a way that would offer us a chance of that safety and that security. But against that same background, we have to also make sure that our police officers are they themselves subject to the rule of law, and insofar as people are hurt and harmed, that all of us are hurt and harmed. Every family that loses an individual either to a criminal act or to an act of the police in self-defense is now exposed to pain, anguish, and long suffering. And that's what our country is right now. But the response cannot be, as I would want to say to citizens in enterprise this morning, the response cannot be retribution and a call to kill police members' family so that they too can share the pain of a loss. When we get to that stage, we are now entering the fringe of the jungle, and that can only create a worse environment. As Prime Minister, I came to this job from the opposition, confidently expecting to become Prime Minister at some time. And in preparation for that job, acknowledged that we needed a better understanding of the policing that was taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. So, as leader of the opposition, I sent Fitzgerald Hines to a place that was similar to Trinidad and Tobago. Similar by size, similar by social structure, and similar by expectation. He was sent to Fairfax County in Virginia, which is on the edge of Washington, part of Washington, D.C., to see how policing was done there and to see whether we could learn anything from it. And we chose Fairfax County because it had a population of about 1.3 million, about the same size as Trinidad and Tobago's national population. And it had a citizenry which had a fair amount of similarity to ours. And Fitzgerald Hines, he was Minister of National Security at one time, so he understood our policing a bit, and he was a policeman himself. So he was sent to Fairfax County to spend some time literally on the ground with the policemen there to see what was happening there. He came back and reported what he had found. And one of the surprising things that he reported was that there were far less policemen in Fairfax County than there were policemen in Trinidad and Tobago per capita. We all now know for sure that our per capita of policemen per 100,000 is well above the international average and well above the Caribbean average. So it might very well not be a shortage of police officers on the job, on the payroll. So then what is the question? It might very well be that, as some police officers will tell you, not enough cars, or not enough this, or not enough that. But then you try to solve that, and it cannot be solved by us giving every policeman a car. And then you might hear, it might not be enough high-powered weapons in the hands of police officers. But we have thought that one of the things that is required is a proper, comprehensive, across-the-board assessment of what is our police manpower and how are they deployed and how can they be redeployed under the current circumstances to get the best of that. And it's against that background that we have approached the British to help us with a comprehensive manpower audit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Tell us what our structure is, who they are, where they are, when they are there, and how effective they are in responding. I am asking the Commissioner of Police and his senior officers in particular, and the 2nd Division leaders, when this exercise is executed, to cooperate fully with it so that we can get the best bases to go forward in making the kinds of changes that are required to bring about modern policing in Trinidad and Tobago. It is not enough for us to just keep throwing things like money or equipment into poor institutional arrangements. If there is a requirement for institutions to be adjusted, to be reconstructed, so that the resources that are put in there can give the outcome, the beneficial outcome, then we should be sufficiently open-minded and sufficiently driven to want to make those changes. I look very negatively at situations and persons who take the position that change is not to be entertained. And what has been accustomed is what we should continue to do. And once we take the approach that leave it so because it works so for me, then we are going to keep changing government after government as the situation worsens. There's a need for some significant changes to be made to allow the resources that we have been putting in this particular area to become more effective in the service of the people. I am particularly disturbed and sometimes on the bordering of depression that the government that I lead is being held quite correctly responsible for the ineffective security of the state that exists now, but then feel totally powerless in making the known and visible changes that should be made to ensure that our police service becomes as effective as it can be. I think it is quite unacceptable at the personal level of Acting Commissioner Williams, at the police divisional level, to have a situation where we cannot appoint a substantive commissioner of police in Trinidad and Tobago. I think that is completely unacceptable, and all of us, from Commissioner of Police, from President, from Parliament, this is an indication of the general dysfunctionality of the management of the country, and it must be addressed somewhere along the line. It just cannot be allowed to continue like this, because I don't know that any war has been fought by part-time officers who have been treated in this way, and you get the best out of them. What we want is the best out of our men and women who are charged with the responsibility of protecting us, providing us with safety and security. And certainly these arrangements are not described as the best. And my fault, your fault, whoever fault it is, this is the situation. Because at the end of the day, it is not the teachers, it is not the priests, it is not the doctors who will be required to respond to the unacceptable level of criminal conduct in Trinidad and Tobago. It is first and foremost the police service and, of course, the wider national security apparatus. In opening this facility this morning, we are providing to the police service one aspect of the support that the state provides at great expense to allow the police officers to function as efficiently as they could. This station provides comfort, it provides security, it provides motivation, and it provides an ability for officers to perform at their best. But again, there's another issue that arises. Who are these officers? The people who enter the police service and who would rise to the rank, maybe all the way up to Commissioner of Police, must be the best citizens that Trinidad and Tobago has to offer. And therefore we need to review the arrangements by which persons enter the police service. Persons have to be thoroughly screened to ensure that you don't include into these privileged ranks persons for whom the police service is simply a place to earn a salary, and worse, to carry out conduct that is inimical to the interests of the national community. We work very hard at the level of the National Security Council, at the level of the Commissioner's Office, at the level of the station. And when we think we're making 2 steps forward every now and then, it hits us in our solar plexus every time we have to read that one officer or group of officers, at worst, conduct activities that convince the public that there is something to be distrusted or mistrusted in the police service. Officers of the police service are the only ones who can rebuild that lost trust. That is a requirement for successful policing. If the population does not trust those people who wear these uniforms, no amount of new station, no amount of increase in number of cars, no amount of increase in salary for the police could bring about better policing in Trinidad and Tobago. And on that basis, as head of the National Security Council, I have exhorted the Acting Commissioner of Police, who the Parliament has given the authority to manage the police service, to ruthlessly remove from the police service persons who are found by him to be unsuitable for the position they hold. Failure to do so is to encourage wrongdoing and to further destroy that trust that ought to exist between the citizenry and the police service. It is easy for us to condemn the entire police service on the part of actions of a few, but we all should know that there are large numbers, the vast majority of police officers are hardworking and well-intentioned, and we want to nurture that. But the corollary is to remove the bad apples who have found themselves within your ranks. The government will provide all the support that we are able to, and the support is not infinite. There are limits to what the taxpayers can provide to the police in terms of finance and in terms of other support. But we think we are providing a reasonable amount to get a better result. And this is one of those provisions. As I talk to you today, in the very near future, we'll open another station like this in Besson Street, another one in Maracas, I think it is, Maracas. And of course, only yesterday, Cabinet finally signed off on the long-awaited police station construction for Carenage. You may recall, so unfit was the Carenage police station that policemen walked out from Carenage to Four Roads, and Carenage Police is now housed in a dwelling house on School Street in Carenage. We are going to build a facility similar to this. That now has been authorized by the Cabinet, and we move towards finalizing this location and the invitation to tender. And we hope that in the very near future, we will be able to open a facility like this for those officers who work in the Carenage area. And you would have heard about community policing, and you would have heard a commitment from this government to establish within regional corporations a community unit of about 100 officers per district. We believe that if we do that, that would be a contribution to this target of bringing policing closer to the community. And Acting Commissioner Williams pointed this morning to the growth of the police youth clubs. And we also believe that if that initiative works hand in hand with the local executive, giving our young people that return to seeing the police as protectors and friends and an area of guidance, that would contribute. Because there's no switch that we're going to flick to bring about improved policing and improved security in this country. There are a number of activities that have to take place at the same time and on a sustained basis. And if we stay the course doing that, then we believe that eventually we will overcome this situation where Trinidad and Tobago is facing every day an unacceptable level of criminal conduct, particularly violent crime, and expressed in the way of murders and challenges from citizens who believe that there is benefit to be had by participation in crime. We will expect that we'll get the best of our police service, starting with recruiting the best within our service. I also am thinking, as head of the National Security Council, that we go back to a situation where, rather than wait for people to grow from constable to commissioner, that we go back to that situation where those persons who have been prepared outside of the police can enter the police service at the level of an officer corps, very much like you have in the Defense Force, so that persons could prepare and enter into modern policing by bringing in some people, not all, some people into the service through an officer corps training, so that we can always have proper succession planning. And I don't want this to be seen by the 2nd Division as an obstacle in the way of any progress of any officer in the service. It would be a strengthening of the service. Because I tell you one thing, inbreeding of inefficiency and inappropriateness could only lead to a deteriorated and a deteriorating organization. And I think the police would benefit from a certain amount of infusion of certain skills into the service. And we want to see policing in Trinidad and Tobago become a profession of highest choice of some of our best people. I don't know how many of you are old as I am who remember when being a police officer was something that the Bajans chose to do in Trinidad and Tobago. And we had a lot of Bajans in our service because nationals didn't see the police as a place to spend their time and to use their talent. We've gone a long way from that. And today, wearing the uniform of the police service of Trinidad and Tobago must be one of the professions to attract our best. And given the kinds of crimes that are being committed in today's world, cybercrime, crimes on the internet, terrorism, it is not just officer and boots like those fellas who came down from Mariah walking to Scarborough. It is manpower, it is brain power, it is technique, skills that didn't even exist 10 years ago that are required by the police service today. And a modern police service in Trinidad and Tobago requires to be able to be populated across the entire plethora of skills that are required. So today, I want to thank you, Licott, for this job that has been finally done. We've had some hiccups with it, but it's been done and it appears to be done well. I haven't heard any complaints yet about it. And St. Joseph, as you know, was one of those famous stations in the East-West corridor that enforced law and order in the community. And I don't mean brutality, I mean the enforcement of the law. Like Besson Street, you knew that there were police officers there who were dedicated to ensuring that the authority of the state was maintained. And I'm sure that in the tradition of the St. Joseph Police and the Besson Street Police and Trinidad and Tobago Police with long history, that as we provide these facilities, we anticipate quite reasonably that it would result in an improvement in the policing of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and that we benefit from improved safety and comfort and security. Because until the people begin to feel safe, there is no security in Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you for your efforts, and I thank you for coming here this morning. Thank you very much.